Just to remind members that the meeting will be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes. So if we move on to the agenda, do you have any apologies?
Chairman, apologies from Councillors Ian Carruthers, Ian Dick, Canon Paisley. At the moment, we don't have Councillor Brodie, Diggle, Yen or Mr Birrell at the meeting, but I don't have apologies from them. Councillor Witt. There's 16 members present at the moment.
Do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, if we move into the body of the agenda, item 3, minutes of the meeting of the 17th of September 2013. Can someone agree the minutes? And the seconder? Ted Thompson. If we move on to item 4, Education Services, Revenue Budget Monitoring Report, 2013-14, the period ended 30th of September 2013. This is just the usual update on where we are in terms of the finances of the committee. So I think, Karen, you're speaking to this. Is there anything you want to add to the report as it stands?
Just to highlight, there isn't significant change since the report presented to the last committee. We're still on target to achieve a break-even position and also deliver all of our agreed savings options. So overall, very positive position.
So if we throw it open to the floor, would anybody like to make any comments? Okay, so if we can agree the recommendations, members are asked to note 2.1 that based on the position as at the end of September 2013, education services are projected to break even against the 2013/14 agreed budget. Can we agree with that? Yep. And 2.2, progress against the delivery of the agreed savings applied to the 2013-14 education services budget, and it is projected that the agreed savings amounts will be fully secured in the current financial year. Are we agreed? Thank you. So if we move on to item 5, Brownhall Primary School Extension, post-occupancy evaluation. So Claire, you're going to speak to this paper. Is there anything further you want to add other than what's in front of the members?
I don't think there's anything else that I would add that's not already included in the paper.
So if we open it to the floor. Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. I did have one question which is regarding the situation which is actually not contained within the body of the papers, and that has arisen from some conversations I've had with parents who seem to be under the impression that subsequent to the renovations, which of course has taken away part of the playground, there would be some possible negotiations with, I believe, the Crichton Trust or whoever is the owner of the land uphill from the school in order to perhaps get some of that land for a playground. I don't know, I may have been misinformed, but I'd be grateful for any information that anybody has about that.
Okay.
We are aware about the discussions about exploring options about extending the outdoor play space, and that's an ongoing item that I would report at a future committee once we have clarity on that.
David McKee.
Thanks, Chair. I think if we go to page 25 of 62, 4.3 project budget, when the project brief was exceeded and then increased significantly during project delivery to include accessibility and increased areas within the school. Now that school is built high up and there's a number of steps to get access to the school. Now how can they go about modernising a school and miss out disabled access? It makes you wonder just what kind of people did we have working on this project altogether to come up with things like and miss out things like that. Was there just no talking to one another? One department no talking to the other. One department decided what they're going to do in irrespective of what the other department wanted. I think it's a pretty horrendous comment, that.
Claire?
I would like to respond to that. The DDA requirements were included as part of the project, but during the project development, it really explored the extent over and above the basic DDA requirements that were required. As you know, that's a very challenging building, a very challenging site, so the team have had to work really hard to actually come up with a very inventive solution to make sure that that adherence was in place. During the execution of the project, we did have a child who enrolled at the school who also required over and above additional support needs, so we need to make sure that their specific requirements are needed as well, so that there is a full and robust process to explain why the DDA has increased over and above what the basic requirements are. And I think the solution that team have come up with is very extensive, and it's also very robust to take into account future proofing for any further additional support requirements any child may need. So it is fully explained in the process, and the product is very robust in delivering future requirements for the school.
John Martin.
Thanks, Chair. It's just the initial allocation in the budget was 412,000. Was this when we were, the plan was to get one of the porter cabins from Lockerbie, for the Lockerbie school when it shut down, and move it to Brownhall, because as I say, and then we discovered when we were going to do that it was actually not feasible to go ahead with that, and then the budget has went up when we got the school actually built. But part of it as well, like, I even though it's my ward, I didn't realise that at the time it was in a conservation area, and I think the original drawing that was brought up as well was it hadn't taken into account of the conservation area, which now it had to. And as I say, when you think where the school had it, it was a more or less a Victorian school, and now it's been brought up to the 21st century. So I really think that work went on. It just seems to be a pity. It didn't. The two departments, design and the education of that, they didn't seem to be working together, and the budget just seemed to grow arms and legs. But I think it was actually due to what we were actually requiring for the school. Like, as I say, we've turned it from one classroom with the main hall being used as another classroom into 3 classrooms with the main hall. The dining room as well, it was archaic. It was, in the winter you were getting icicles in the window. Now they have got the new dining area in the hall, as I say, and as well, like, they can use the hall now for more or less PE, whereas before they were having to walk down the rain down to the community centre down there. So, as I say, I don't know if that originally 412 was when we were actually deciding we were going to be putting in porter cabins rather than more or less a rebuild of the school, because that's what it more or less is inside when you see it now. It is really a good news when you listen to the parents, what they had before and what they've got now. I think it's completely night and day, and I think Mr. Grant will agree when he actually opened the school that the parents were absolutely brilliant for what had actually been achieved at the school.
Louise?
Thanks, Chair. I think the only comment that I would make is probably one that's coming through the report in terms of the clarity of the brief and the scope of the project when we're setting budgets. And I think, as the councillors expressed, the budget related to a different scope of works, and what's ultimately been achieved is really what the school actually needs.
Okay. Jim McComb.
Thanks, Chair. Looking at page 25, 4.1, there's a comment there condition has been addressed in part. Not all the school was renewed. Are there any parts of the school which are still not up to standard?
I wouldn't say they're up to standard, but I think we're just acknowledging the point that the full school didn't have a full redecoration and recarpet, so it's the internal finishes. So I wouldn't say it was up to standard, it's still very much fit for purpose and delivering a good quality education, but just wanted to acknowledge that there wasn't a full refurbishment throughout.
Any other speakers? I'm pleased this report has actually come towards or to the Education Committee, because I think it's become clear that what we've got at the moment is much better than we started with. It's just a question of how we actually got there. And I think it was a lack of communication between education services and property and architectural services. And I note in recommendation 2.2, there will be a further report coming back to the committee before May next year as to what the revised process is to make sure we don't end up in this situation again. We do need to monitor this, particularly in the financial situation we are at the moment. We can't let projects sort of go off on a tangent and produce something which we weren't aiming for in the first place, albeit in this particular instance, it was a good solution at the end of the day. So I'll be very interested in seeing what this report is, and hopefully it'll act as a template, for our design processes in future for all their service departments. If there are no more speakers, can we go to the recommendations? Members are asked to note 2.1. The findings of the post-occupancy evaluation review as detailed at the appendix. Are we agreed on that? Yep, thank you. And 2.2, agree that the lessons learnt are taken forward to benefit future education projects by undertaking a review of the capital project approval and delivery process with the aim to present a revised process to Education Committee by May 2014. Are we happy to agree on that? Agreed. Thank you. And if we move on to item 6, the Dalbeattie Learning Campus. So the purpose of the report is to provide an update to committee on the progress made in developing the Dalbeattie Learning Campus project, to ask for agreement to purchase land, and for consideration of the recommendation made by Statutory Area Committee regarding the location of the public library facility. So Claire, you're speaking to this. Is there anything further you want to add?
No, Chair, there's nothing else I would like to add.
So if we open it up to the floor, Rob, you want to speak?
Thanks, Chairman. Warmly welcome the update report. Certainly hope, not unsurprisingly, that we do indeed agree to progress with the land acquisition. I think it would be fair to reflect that Claire's team has done a huge amount of work on this, and a great deal of engagement with the parent councils and the pupils and staff at the primary school and the high school, which I think is very much appreciated. I think it'd be fair to say that there's now a real excitement that's actually building about this project. It's been talked about for a long time, of course. Goes back some considerable time now, but it's now becoming much more of a reality to the people that are going to be using it in the future. With regard to recommendation 2.3, the results of the consultation that we received in Dalbeattie about relocating the library were overwhelmingly clear that was not something that was wanted. And there are a number of, I think, very good and cogent arguments that were made in relation to that. Certainly I hope that we will endorse the Statutory Area Committee's recommendation in that regard. Having said that, I also think that there is a great deal of willingness as far as the community is concerned for there to be community use of the school, and indeed I think perhaps a greater degree of community use, particularly of the high school, the existing high school, than there has been in the past. It's maybe been something of a bone of contention that there's a community wing that was built onto the high school in the 1980s, but it's not actually been all that readily accessible by the community in the past. So I would suggest that while the library is maybe not the right proposal, there is both a need and a willingness for there to be significant community use of the campus. So I hope that the engagement that goes on with that will be fruitful. And it was with that in mind that I wanted to ask, since I know it's been discussed in the past, how officers are going to engage with the community so that we actually get a consensus on what the campus can offer to the wider community. The possibility of a whole town approach has been raised, and it's something that was discussed. Councillor Blake and Councillor Stipp, when he was still on the committee, will remember me banging on about this at the area committee in years past. It's an excellent opportunity actually to take that very approach and address it. So, as well as hoping that we can agree the recommendations, I was maybe looking for some more information on how the Claire and their team are going to look at engaging with the community on the whole project, but specifically on the issue of community use, as that's a kind of hot topic of the moment.
Claire?
In response to Councillor Davidson, we have 3 avenues that we're exploring in terms of how we do effective community engagement. Firstly, we want to hold an open event, because as I think we all are aware, there's quite a number of very active community groups in Dalbeattie, and we want to make sure that all of them have access to us. And we're going to do that in conjunction with the Tier 1 contractor, because they're very keen to meet the community as well, and also working with employability and community benefits colleagues, because as much as this is about creating a community facility within the school, it's also about making sure that the community get the benefit of us actually executing the project there, both in terms of apprenticeship opportunities and employment opportunities. So we're exploring that at the moment. We do have an initial meeting with the Tier 1 tomorrow and our employability colleagues to start that forward. We also, as you've alluded to, I've engaged with planning, regeneration, economic, NHS and Scottish Future Trust colleagues about exploring the whole town approach and about convening a meeting to start discussions about how best to approach that. And we had an initial internal meeting last week to discuss, again, the details around that. We're also exploring with the staff, students and parents about setting up cross-user working groups, because we've seen that as a very effective tool that we've used in Dumfries Learning Town, about to get representation from the user groups in one room to work on various aspects of the project. The staff and students have confirmed their willingness to be part of that, and so have the parent council representatives. So the next step is about engaging community representatives in that as well. So that's 3 clear work streams that we're progressing on to make sure that we do understand the community and involve them in the process.
Ian, you want to speak?
Just briefly, I'd like to totally agree with the comments of Rob. I think the project has been excellently run, and thank Claire for her work in that and also keeping us advised in it. I think Rob really said everything that I would say, albeit probably a little more eloquently than I would have said. But in relation to the library, we did go out to consultation. Almost 85% said they did not want it. I think it's a clear guide that we do not include it.
Jim Dempsey.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question. I fully support what's been proposed here, and we always have supported that. But the reference to 100 square metres of floor space being built in, if you like, for want of a better word, to provide a library service. Now, we have a kind of position we're taking at the moment where we're going to combine community customer services and library provision. So I would presume that there isn't a potential for putting community customer services in the school and library elsewhere. So just what are we going to do with 100 square metres of floor space? Because it seems to me somewhat bizarre. We're going to build it first and then wonder what to do with it. We should be going through a consultation to see if there's a need for additional space that the community identify, and then factor in that space rather than create the space first and then wonder what to do with it, especially when we have a formula for classes, class sizes that will determine the overall size and scale of the school. It seems to me an unfortunate situation. Might also ask the question, how on earth we got to the situation of factoring in a library first before we asked the Dalbeattie folk if that's where they actually wanted it. But, I think it's somewhat bizarre, the position we find ourselves in. Happy with the proposals, happy with the development of the school. I just find this particular element of it somewhat unusual.
I think we all recognise we do have certain problems in terms of consultation, which we'll need to address in the future. But Claire would like to comment on that.
The specific wording around the allocation of that space is provision of community use, which could be used as a library facility. Just for clarity, there's been no design taken forward to date. There's just an allowance made for community to make sure that the community is represented in the new project. So we're very much in line with what you're saying in terms of approach, that this is exactly the right time. We've got the design team and the contractor on board, and we will effectively engage with the community to say, okay, how do we create this community facility, and how do we make sure the facilities are accessible, and most importantly, what do the community actually want to use? So this is exactly the right time, and it's exactly with the approach that you're saying, that nothing has been predefined. It's just an allowance made to say that the community is acknowledged as part of this project. Now we really need to start working hard to actually identify what is the requirement.
I think Rob wants to come in on the back of that.
Thanks for your indulgence, Chair. Just on that point, the Community and Customer Services and Library facility in Dalbeattie will very shortly complete its integration. So CCS will be delivered, all of those services will be delivered out of the existing library. Ironically, that became one of the arguments against relocating it to an out-of-town or a more out-of-town setting at the new high school, the integration only just having been completed. What I would say was that I went along to some of the consultation that was undertaken by Claire and also by Annie Thompson from CCS in Dalbeattie, and actually it was done very well, albeit the timescale was, I think, against them, and the timing itself falling within the school holidays was maybe not ideal. It's maybe an issue to reflect on for the future, and it's interesting in the context of the paper we have later on about community use of schools and how education and CCS currently interrelate, that maybe if the respective responsibilities of the two services had been slightly clearer at the start of that, because education are of course not responsible for public libraries, then we might have got to a stage where we had a consultation a bit earlier in the process. But I do think that the officers made the absolute best use of the time and the resources that they had, and they did actually get a pretty good interaction with the folk in Dalbeattie, and they did get a very clear response from it as well.
Next speaker is Colin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered who is responsible for the design of the project. Is it the Council's architectural services, or is it down to the South West Hub for taking on that role? And no matter who it is, can we make sure that education actually speak with them and then make sure they get delivered what they actually want, rather than the previous item where we end up costing an awful lot more money to put in a classroom at the last minute, if that was the case. The other thing is, I'd just like to back up what Councillor Blake said, that the consultation in Dalbeattie was 86%, I think, in favour of keeping the library where it was, and I really think we should listen to them and do that.
Claire?
The design comes as part of the Tier 1 contractor, which is the partner to deliver the project through the South West Hub. So it is the Grahams and their design team, which is Holmes Miller. Education services are involved in every meeting, as well as the schools are involved in every meeting. So every part of this is user engagement and very much education led in terms of ensuring the design meets the needs of the staff and students, and that's the priority of this project, and delivering something new in line with the educational ethos and vision that we have. So it's a completely different process and approach.
Last speaker I've got who's indicated they want to speak so far is Jim McComb.
Thanks, Chair. Was it originally intended that the school would make use of the library? And are there plans for an in-house school library in the present arrangements?
Currently within the affordability budget we have library allowance for the primary school and for the secondary school. It's really at this stage now to really figure out, does that get put together? Does it operationally operate differently? We'd made an allowance for a library facility, potentially for community, but there'd been no operational discussions. It was too early to actually define what or how that would look like or how it get used by the school. And really that's where we're at now, defining all these spaces, what they should mean, how they get designed, how they get integrated, and how they'll get used to make sure they're most effectively used.
So I take it there will still be sufficient library provision for both the primary and secondary pupils?
Yes.
Does anyone else want to speak? Just to sum up, I think we are making good progress with the Dalbeattie Learning Campus, and I think hopefully we have learned from the public consultation, and given how overwhelming it was in favour of not incorporating the library, etc., within the new campus, I think we need to endorse the recommendation made by the Stewardship Committee. 85% is fairly overwhelming, and taking into account what's been said about the community use of these schools, I think that's something which we definitely need to bear in mind in future whenever we are building new schools and even looking backwards. And I think that ties in with item 8 in terms of the school let. You know, these are very, very valuable, expensive, very useful resources in our communities, and we need to make the most of it. So if nobody else wants to speak, can we move to the recommendations? The recommendation, the members are asked to 2.1, agree to progress with the land acquisition as indicated in 4.1.1. Are we in agreement? We agreed on that. 2.2, no progress made with the procurement of professional advisors and Tier 1 contractor through the SW Hub framework as indicated in 4.3.1. Are we in agreement? Good. 2.3, consider the recommendation made by Stewardship Committee regarding the location of the library facilities as indicated 3.3 and agree that a public library facility should not form part of the school footprint. Are we in agreement? Yeah, we're all in agreement. And 2.4, agree that officers should engage with the community to explore how the space allocation could be utilised to provide wider benefits to the community as indicated in 4.4. Are we in agreement? We're agreed. Thank you.
Just a throwaway line. If there is no identified need, I suppose it's a given that that will be factored out. We'll not simply build it for the sake of building it, because clearly the intended purpose for it is no longer appropriate. And whilst community use is absolutely fine, if there's an identified need, then we shouldn't be creating it just for the sake of creating it. And that's not in the report, but I presume that's a given.
Claire?
I would agree. Like everything, we need to justify a business need and a business case for every square metre. So if we can't define a clear community use which will benefit the community, then I would be proposing and bringing back to committee to say that we'll remove that space from the footprint.
Right, thank you, Claire. If we move on to item 7, performance report, school meal service in 2012-13. So this is an update effectively on the performance report detailing school meal uptake by schools and overall. And I think it's Kate MacLeod and Al Mawson who are going to speak. Oh, sorry. It's Gillian Brights and Al Mawson. So is there anything you want to add to the report, Julian?
No, I think it's a very positive report. It confirms a continued increase in both primary and secondary school meal uptake, increasing on previous years and comfortably above the Scottish average. There's quite a wide range of uptakes by schools, as you can see within the appendix, but there's no consistent pattern to this. And we continue to work with head teachers and catering managers to meet the school targets. And Alan and I are happy to take any questions.
If we can throw it up into debate. Gail?
Thank you, Chair. Very positive report, and everything's still moving in the right direction, which is good. I think it would be useful for members to maybe know, particularly in relation to the secondary schools, because they're probably easier because there's lesser of them. We do have large variances in the uptake, and it would be useful to know if there's any sanctions set on pupils within individual schools, because, for instance, at Lockerbie, they're not allowed out S1 to S3, which is probably why they've got the highest rate. And also the percentage of what type of meals they're taking. Are they having the 185 meal deal, or are they having snacks, or are they having fast food? Because again, certainly at Lockerbie, anecdotally, kids are sitting down to the 185 hot plated food, which is nutritionally fantastic. Are we seeing that trend elsewhere? And if not, can we look at the best practices in our good schools and try and replicate that elsewhere? But a really positive report and still moving in the right direction.
Alan?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah. I mean, I think what we can say is certainly a meal deal concept is the majority of our sales across that. We certainly can probably get some stats for that for you if you require them. There's always an impact when the school keeps some of the pupils in, whether it's S1, S2, and then certainly in Lockerbie, a unique situation of S3, and that is the specific reason for that in there. What I would say in that is it's certainly in the primary and secondary, what's worthwhile mentioning is that certainly for the last 18 months, what we've rolled out to all schools is cater managers' action plans, and them action plans have a lot of fixed actions in them, as well as certain sections for them to fill out and work with the head teacher And that seems to be working across the board with certainly the beneficial growth that we see across the whole spectrum of schools. But yeah, I think key is that certainly the meal deal concept, about 18 months ago as well, we launched the meal deal integration of the new cash system that basically allows them to pick up a multitude of products that allows them to get that 185 deal that's in that. So the majority of kids, if they miss it, the till actually picks it up for them now, whereas before they were looking for a manual version of that, and at the till the catering staff will say one more item, and you'll get a meal deal from that, which has been hugely beneficial. Worthwhile mentioning as well, nutritionally, all the products that we sell meet the nutritional guidelines. They do, albeit that we've got a wide variance in secondary, a lot more than what choice they've got certainly in primary. But certainly that's added to it. But key point would be if locker BSS 1, 2s and 3s being kept in.
Rob?
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, it really is a very good report indeed. I mean, the figures speak for themselves, I think. And I was particularly pleased to see highlighted the fact that we do use quite a lot of local produce, really a lot of local produce. I think it's important that that gets out to a wider audience because it actually reassures parents that they're getting something that's good. What I wanted to ask about was the online payments. You usually try not to say anything about being a parent at the Education Committee, but certainly as a parent, I think online payments would be very useful from my point of view. What I was wondering was, how is that going to, or what's it going to look like when it's up and running? I mean, is it something that will go into from the council's website, or will it be a kind of standalone thing, or can you just do it through online banking if you happen to have it yourself? You know, how will it actually work in practice?
Alan?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, the online payments, we've been investigating online payments for about 2 years now, and we piloted it originally with another system, as the paper indicates, at Dumfries High School. Annan has now got the CRB, which is our current cashless catering provider. That basically links in with the cashless catering card that they use in the school at the moment, so they'll utilise that to still pay for them if they top them up online. So you go to the council website, there'll be a link there for payments, and you'll just follow the same. We've been very thorough in making sure that the websites look the same as they do in any of the shopping purchases that you would buy online. So the same process is happening exactly on there that they go on. It tops that Pacific card up so they can't spend it anywhere else but the school. And when they're going, obviously they just use the cashless catering system. We think that for the first time that the online payment system rolling out to secondaries is actually going to give huge value to the cashless catering card now. Because actually it will, whereas at the moment, in the schools, you can still take cash in and top them up on cash. For the first time, the online payment system will allow the cashless card to be a cashless system.
Graham?
Thanks, Chair. It's a very good report, and it's a positive, mainly positive report. But I'm quite disturbed at the massive drop in the number of free school meals in secondary as opposed to the primary. I mean, you're running at 81%, all of a sudden it's 54%, which is quite a big drop. And I'm just concerned that I'm wondering how we're going to try and develop that, because it is important that these children get fed. And I see in the report here it says that through the launch of the online payment, you would hope to increase that. Can you explain to me how that's going to be done?
Alan?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it's worth highlighting nationally that secondary free school meals is always significantly lower than primary, and that's just due to the fact that in the primary school the parent makes the choice, the child's eating the meal, and in secondary school the pupil virtually makes the choice. Online payments will assist with that, because basically we're hoping to raise the profile. But as part of our marketing strategy, what we found when we're launching at Annan is as we launch the online payments, the primary 7s into the S1 are the target audience for that. And, you know, the parents, we've marketed it cleverly enough that it looks like a natural progression to go online payments. And as part of that, we see that as the route that they're taking note of that information, because they see how they're going to pay for the school meal. But ultimately, as top of that, it gives us an opportunity. It gives us an opportunity to highlight the free school meal criteria. It is more challenging in secondary. You know, primary numbers are up. I think the first indications from APSI and last year's stats show that we're probably sitting about 12 on our free school meal uptake in secondary. So, you know, we're pushing that forward all the time. It is considerably challenging in secondary, because a lot of the pupils, it's in reflection of the uptake. You know, the uptake in primary is significantly higher than it is in secondary, and I think that just reflects in the free school meals uptake as well. But what marketing strategy, just to reiterate, marketing strategy for free school meals is at every opportunity to show the public, the parents, through all our literature and radio campaigns, is to highlight that criteria. We do see this year as significantly important, because we see the high impact of that with new welfare reform impact as well. So we're monitoring that, and we would like to make sure that the public see that the criteria that's required to try and get that increase up. Chair.
Colin?
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 37, I'm just looking at a school that I do know, Auchencairn, 75%. And further down, Duncow, which I'm not familiar with, 28%. I mean, they've both got roughly the same numbers. I just wondered what all the kids in Duncow are doing that they're not doing in Auchencairn.
I suggest they're having packed lunches. I mean, there's no. This the difficulty we've got is when we look at school meals, we do what we'd say is a region-wide marketing strategy to try and develop that. But about 18 months ago, we looked at the uptake had significantly increased, and we need to start looking at individual schools. No two are the same, and that can be a combination of, you know, the community, the school itself, the structure of school, the dining room. It can be a whole multitude of reasons that we've got that. I think, you know, we have to put a specific finger on. Sitting today can't do that. What we've done is we've empowered the catering managers with their action plans to meet with the school management team, the head teachers, and come up with a strategy to try and improve on that. And I think that the annual growth overall has shown that strategy works. What we're looking at doing certainly next year is we'll be targeting, as a management team for facilities management, we'll be targeting the bottom tiers of them schools, going out and actually looking at the action plans and working with the schools to try and increase them uptakes and identify specifically why it's not high.
Yeah, just to go back to the secondary and primary, the uptake, and I agree, you know, we've got to find out why there's higher uptake in some of the schools than others. It's not clear to me about the free school meals and which are paid and which is free. Now, within that percentage, say you take a 26%, 20% of them could be free school meals. Or, you know, and that could be 100% of the free school meal uptake. So we, you know, until we break it down school by school and, you know, the primary figure as well, we won't know how much of that is actually, you know, people go. It could be geographical, you know, people just maybe go into near the town or that, and you know, the percentage goes into buy a meal. But it'd be interesting to find out how much of them percentage is free and how much of it's paid.
I assume we could update the table and put that information within that for each of the individual schools. Could we email that out to members? Do we have any more speakers? Oh.
Sorry, with your indulgence. Just back to the uptakes again in primary schools. We have some fairly sizable primary schools, such as Castle Douglas, Dalbeattie, Georgetown, etc., who have some fairly low, sort of around about the 50% and below 50% for uptake compared to our more rural schools. Do we have any sort of data on how much of the other part of the percentage is children going home, you know, because they obviously live in more sort of urban areas? Are they allowed down the street at any of these schools, these sort of larger primaries, and packed lunches? Because obviously, from a safety concern perspective, I wouldn't like to think that there's primary kids going down the streets at lunchtime. But can we have that reassurance, and can we get a breakdown in the future maybe as to how many actually still go home for lunches? Because that might impact on things like school crossing patrols and decisions through the budget process that we might have to make.
I'm certainly very clear that the numbers of children who go home at lunchtime are very small. And we've certainly done some analysis, particularly with respect to the school crossing patrols. I think the difference really is between school meals and packed lunches. As far as I'm aware, and you may tell me different, but as far as I'm aware, there are no primary children who leave school campus at lunchtime if they're not going home for lunch.
Alistair?
Thank you, Chair. Just following up from what Gail said, my understanding was that in primary schools, children were allowed home if they're going home for lunch, but not as a rule allowed out just to go up the street to buy the lunch. Would that be correct? Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any more speakers? No. In that case, can we move to the recommendations? So members are asked to note 2.1, the performance of the school meal service is detailed at 3.2 and 3.3. We agreed? Yep. 2.2, the school meal uptake for all primary and secondary schools as detailed at appendices 1 and 2. Are we agreed? We agreed. And 2.3, the programme of development for online payments in secondary schools as detailed at 3.4. Are we agreed? Thank you very much for the report. So if we move on to item 8, the school lets background paper and baseline use analysis. And the purpose of this report is to inform members on the current arrangements the school lets, to present a review of income and use, and to make recommendations for further work. This is something personally which I've been banging on for quite a while to get this report to committee, and I'm very pleased that it has now come. And I think it's very illuminating in what we've achieved to date and the potential we have henceforth in enabling communities to use our school facilities to a much greater extent. And as it says, this is effectively initial paper, and I'd expect a follow-up to come to committee after we've had further communications with other services across the council as to how we can actually maximise all of the facilities and to look at the costs of opening these lets up to the public. So I think it's Gillian who's presenting this paper. So is there anything further you want to add?
Just as you say, thank you, Chair. I think it would be fair to say that to date there has not been any overall evaluation of the use of school buildings, and in preparing this report it was helpful to go back and look at where we've come from. It's highlighted a number of practical but still important issues which have been barriers to improvement, and I'm confident that these can be resolved over the coming months. Members are asked to support this improvement process, and will use this report, as you highlighted, as a baseline to review custom and practice for school lets in all our schools with colleagues in DG First and Customer and Community Services.
I'll open the debate to the floor. Gail, followed by Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I welcome this report. I think yourself, myself and possibly Councillor Marshall have been banging on about this for quite some time. And it is interesting to see the usage and the differences again in usage across the region, particularly in relation to the PPP schools. I think the crucial thing with this going forward now, from my perspective, and I welcome a further report, is what are we going to do about it? Because we've got the stats here in front of us and we all want to see increased use. We know we've got fantastic facilities in our communities. We're trying to rationalise our estate. And again, a little bit like the property services, education services sort of wrangle with Brownhall, we need much greater joined up thinking and much more proactive, I suppose, press marketing of these facilities. And I think that that's one thing that we have been screaming about. We've got a table in here which tells us the fees and charges for the use of absolutely top-notch, state-of-the-art facilities, which are cheaper than some of our archaic facilities in our communities. And people simply don't know that. You know, they don't know that it's half the price to rent a small meeting room in Lockerbie Academy with full video conferencing facilities than it is to hire an old room in Lockerbie Town Hall. They simply don't know. Nobody knows that. And I think we've done a very poor job. Not the fault of education services, to be fair, because we've taken this through the comms unit many times. But we've tried to promote at area level through the comms unit that these facilities are available. This is what they are. This is how much they cost. Come on and use them. And there seems to have been some reluctance, I think, to grab a hold of this now, cross-party with absolute anonymity, and make sure that that work is done and how we maximise it is absolutely essential. So I very much welcome the report, and I'll welcome and support any future ideas as to how we implement that. Not easy, I know, but absolutely crucial that we do it. But thank you.
Colin?
Thank you, Chair. It was along similar lines, but I was going to suggest specifically that this list of charges and facilities, there's a lot of sports hubs being set up in the region, specifically in towns or for areas, And it would be really handy for these sport hubs to have this list, where the venues are, how much they are an hour, etc., so that people can actually see what is available in their locality, what they can do in it. And it may well be that, you know, the sports hall in Kirkcudbright, great for badminton or basketball, but it may well be for a big meeting or something like that, could be used for that as well. Just a second point, I just like sort of clarification, because some of these say that actually they've got VAT at standard rate and others don't. Does it apply, so like to the third one down on page 51, main sports hall, it says VAT at standard rate. Is that VAT for all these categories or just the commercial?
Julian?
I think it's just the commercial. I would have to get back on you
Right.
on the absolutes on that one, I have to admit.
Well, while you're doing that, if you don't mind, because it down the bottom, third from the bottom, external grass pitches, VAT at standard, but there's no commercial there. So I'm just wondering whether it's applying across the board or whether you pick out the commercial use. Okay?
If any member asks for further information, can we make sure it goes to all members? Obviously, everyone's involved in the... Do you have any more speakers? Jim Dempster?
It's just one, Chair, and I accept what's been said at 332, but is there an opportunity, or will there be an opportunity to have a look and see exactly what usage is taking place on all the schools? Because I think that's important we understand what all schools are being utilised for, and if no, what opportunities are available for the community to access them, and why that information is disseminated. And I realise it's a large piece of work, especially in primary schools, but even if we've got the piecemeal, you know, secondary schools first, followed by primary schools, so that we can get a look at the whole picture and see just what's been used where, when, and what the opportunities are and what are being missed.
I think it would be fair to say there have been some assumptions made, and again, it's not pointing any fingers, but I think we've all assumed somebody else was doing something. I think there's been an element of that over the last few years, and now we've got an opportunity to sit and say, right, this is where we're starting from. It's been quite difficult to get a historical overview for what primary schools and secondary schools have been using. We're able to look at the income because we can do it through the finance system, but it's been quite difficult to pin that down with that £13.20. What has that been for? Who has been using that? So it's been quite difficult to pull all that, but we certainly can do as much as we can, and we can start from here.
Jim McCall?
Chair, I'm a wee bit surprised on page 44 that the school estate is not currently included in the list made available for individual and community use. I would hope that this would be rectified as soon as possible.
I think when I mentioned about the assumptions being made, I was also surprised that that was not included in the list. I think Councillor McGregor highlighted that there had been some work with communications. Obviously, our schools publicise their opportunities within local websites and within their local school community. And it was not until we started to unpick some of this that we realised there are some gaps in the public information that we provide. Thank you.
Ted?
Thank you, Chair. Page 47 of 62, 384. It refers to refreshing the janitor's job description, which will bring flexibility. Could you actually expand on that?
Julian?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, the working this year, we've been looking at just refreshing the janitor's job description, and that'll allow some of the grey areas that we've got as far as expanding on the lets is concerned. The janitors currently at the moment, they didn't have a part within their current role that they would look at specifically for lets, and we're working with education on the transfer of janitors going back under education in April next year, which will allow the further discussion with the janitors on how they've got to progress the parts of the lets and supporting the school with additional lets, with community works going on within the school buildings with the expansion of that works and expanding them lets within that. Yeah.
Any more speakers? If you just hold on a moment, I think we're going to get a card for you. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Thank you everyone for your patience. I would just like to say about Heathrow Primary School, the PPP additional hours has been increased since 2011, so I have to comment this. I wonder if officers have any further reports or information about Heathrow uptakings. Is it just because of more publicity for the communities?
I don't have any specific information. Thank you.
I would like to find out.
I can certainly find out. I have to say
Thank
the PPP team were extremely supportive in providing us information for this report, and I can certainly ask for further more detailed information if members require.
That's certainly something which we've highlighted in the past, and specifically Heath Hall. And I know that the team were going to get out there and advertise much more than it was, because it is very, very low. Graham?
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back to the VAT question, you've got VAT and everything from main sports halls down, or VAT at standard rate will be charged, but there's no VAT charged on small meeting rooms or large meeting rooms, even for the commercial rate, or there's no indication. Why is that? Because commercial businesses would appreciate the ability to grab some money back.
Gillian?
Can I get back to members on that one? I'm afraid I'm not an expert on the VAT charges, but I'll get back to you.
Do we have any more speakers? Now, just to reiterate, I think this is the start of the process. I mean, I was quite astonished to find that we were actually, the income was £32,000 less than the cost of administering the LETS process. And I appreciate that this is something which seems to have got lost over the years. I noticed in 2005 it was sort of highlighted that we need to do something in terms of the LET, and various events happened, but the position seems to be even worse than it was in relation to what was said about highlighting how organisations or individuals can hire these facilities. We do need to look at the website design, for example, to make it very, very easy, not just in terms of the school lets, but for council lets generally. You know, you really have to dig deep in the council website to find out how you hire any sort of room and what it's going to cost, etc., and whether it's available. You know, there must be sort of commercial ways of handling this. So lots of organisations got lots of rooms which they can hire out all the time. So that's something we need to look at. But we also, as I said, need to work with CCS in terms of how we coordinate all of this and look at the pricing scheme. It goes back to the fact that if we aren't actually managing to let these facilities out, once we get a facility whereby people can book them, then we do need to look at what the pricing scheme is. You know, it would be sensible to have 4 rooms in a secondary school in use and have one janitor there, etc., and sort of coordinate if that's what needs to be done in order to sweat these resources, as the saying is. So if we can move to the recommendation. Sorry. Gail?
With your indulgence, I don't actually think this scale of charges list is complete either, because on previous ones we've had rates for things like football matches where the match itself is rated at the entirety of the 90 minutes. And I think there's been other data on previous harmonised fees and charges that are not showing on this, but that are still very relevant, particularly in relation to the PPP schools. So, you know, any future, we'd need to make sure that we included all the fees and charges, not just the sort of basic ones.
Gillian?
Yes, if I may, there actually are, again, a piece of work that needed done. We have, this is our education service, fees and charges, the harmonisation is enacted. However, the way that that is interpreted is perhaps not completely consistent. So there's also a CCS list of fees and charges and a PPP list, and we now need to work with Karen and the team to bring those together. But you're absolutely right.
Just before we move to the recommendations, I see in 3.8.3 it mentions the head teachers having no incentive to promote their space. So I think that's something which we also need to address. I mean, there's no reason why they should have to suffer the wear and tear, and the income, when it does build up, goes into a central pot. You know, there should be benefits for the individual schools in order to compensate them and to encourage them to actually push the idea of letting out their resources. And having spoken to some of the secondary head teachers about this, I think they would be quite keen on doing that as long as they can get some benefit from it. So if we can move to the recommendations. Members are asked to note 2.1, and the current arrangement for community use of schools is detailed in 3.3 in Appendix 1. Are we happy to note that? Yeah. 2.2, the summary of use and income generated through the school let arrangements for the period 2012/13 and projected for 2013/14 as detailed in 3.3, 3.6 and Appendix 2. We're happy to note that? Yeah, move attention. 2.3, the summary of use and income generated through the PPP additional hours arrangements for the period 2011/12, 2012/13 and to date in 2013/14 as detailed in 3.5 and Appendix 3. Noted. 2.4, current issues, concerns and opportunity for the school let arrangements moving forward as detailed in 3.7 and 3.8. Noted. 2.5, the need to work across services to ensure communities have the benefits of access to school facilities, thus ensuring the council's the council assets are used most efficiently as described in 3.9. And can I suggest that we have a further recommendations, 2.6, that further progress reports are presented to this committee as they become available, I think possibly in the next 6 months, and we'll take it from there thereafter. Councillor Dempsey?
Thanks for that. I'm glad you put that in, Chair, and I presume that will cover all schools. You want it phraseology, all schools, so that we have a picture across the region of what's actually happening, what the potential is.
I think that'll be the case. Okay, thank you. So if we move on to, it's actually warming up in here. Item 9. Okay. Item 9, service reviews, education services. Purpose of this report is to consider the indicative timeline in order for forthcoming service reviews to be completed by education services, which have been initiated through the business planning process and through member engagement with the activity-based budget. And the author of this one is Gillian again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As you highlighted, this paper gives an overview of the 3 functional reviews undertaken to date as detailed in the business plan, and it gives a rationale for the areas now under scrutiny. So it tries to give a bit of a context of what we've already done, what we're halfway through doing and what we're planning to do in the future, in conjunction with the efficiency savings that we're also presenting to members. There's a lot of activity. So in summary, we ask that the functional areas of additional support for learning and early years and integration be considered as from January, undertaken by a service review using the corporate template. And this will be followed by a service review of elements of primary and secondary education, following on with a focus for savings on 2016-17. This timescale allows us to take account of national developments in delivery of schooling that are not in our gift to change at the moment. And the reviews will be conducted in parallel with continued consideration for efficiencies while maintaining strong outcomes for children and young people. I'm happy to take any.
So if we open it to debate.
This isn't going to work, is it?
Gail?
Sorry. Again, I appreciate this is a massive piece of work that's going to take more than a few months to complete, particularly the service areas that we're looking at. In light of the fact that our Deputy Director has just retired and probably other management pressures within the department, I just need reassurances that you have the capacity to do this, because when we saw what came out from Planning, Housing and the Environment recently, it's a fair chunk of work. And certainly all of us do not want the eye getting taken off the ball in the schools to do this sort of work. And it's just to have that reassurance that you have sufficient capacity to do the job without any detriment. And if not, do you have a little bit of budget put aside if required to assist you to backfill? Because I think it's crucial that we have absolutely the right service reviews, but I certainly don't want to see members of staff work to death trying to complete them on our behalf, because I think you're already stretched to capacity.
Director?
Thanks, Chair. I was trying to get through the whole meeting without saying a word, but can't help myself. Yeah, I take that point on, and I think that's really why it's really stretched out and staggered. Right, we're being realistic. We're not going to try and do 4 or 5 service reviews in the space of 6 months. Can't do it. So we'll do 2 over the course of the next whole year and 2 the following year. But we do have practical plans in place and people nominated to actually lead the review, and we'll be very careful about what you're saying because we've still got to be running the service out there. But these do need done, because once we get into the sort of figures that the council is under pressure to achieve, we can't do that through normal reductions or efficiencies. We really need to look at how we do things quite differently.
Do we have any further speakers? Nope. Okay, so if we move to the recommendations, members are asked to 2.1, note that our council service review toolkit will be used as a basis for conducting and delivering the service reviews with specific application to education services as outlined in section 5. Noted. 2.2, agree that service reviews considering adult support for learning and early years integration be undertaken during 2014 with a view to delivering services for years 2015-16 as detailed in 6.1 and 6.2. Noted. 2.3, agree that service reviews considering aspects of primary education, aspects of secondary education be undertaken in 2015 with a view to delivering services for years 2016-17 as detailed in 6.1 and 6.2. Noted. 2.4, agree that a service review of strategic management and support is not undertaken within time period 2014-2017, but that continued efficiencies are sought through the budget savings process for reasons outlined in 6.1.4. Noted. Thank you, members. I've got no further items for consideration, so thank you very much for your time.